Every time you place your trust in someone, you gamble with your own survival. Machiavelli understood this truth centuries ago, warning rulers that trust is the sweetest poison. People smile, swear loyalty, and whisper promises. Yet behind closed doors, ambition gnaws at their souls. The very ally you confide in today may become the enemy who betrays you tomorrow. History is littered with kings, generals, and leaders who fell not because of open war, but because they trusted too much. Think about it. How many betrayals in your own life came from strangers? Almost none. The sharpest knives are always in the hands of those closest to you. So here's the question. If betrayal is inevitable, how do you survive in a world where trust is a trap? Why do people desperately crave trust? Because trust makes the world feel safer. It's the invisible contract that allows us to sleep soundly at night, to share secrets, and to believe that someone will guard our back when danger arrives. But here lies the paradox. The very comfort of trust is also its most lethal weakness. The moment you feel safe, you stop watching. And the moment you stop watching, you invite betrayal. Machiavelli saw through this illusion centuries ago. He warned that human beings are not guided by loyalty, but by self-interest. Promises are kept only when they serve advantage. When conditions change, so does loyalty. If betrayal can bring profit, respect, or survival, even the most loyal friend may turn against you without hesitation. And the tragedy is not that betrayal exists. It's that most people never expect it until the knife is already in their back. Think of Julius Caesar, a man who trusted his closest allies, who believed his friends would protect him. Yet on the Ides of March, he fell under the blades of the very men who swore their loyalty. Et tu, Brute was not just the cry of a dying man. It was the scream of someone who realized that trust had blinded him to the reality of ambition. If the most powerful man in Rome could be undone by trust, what makes us think we are any safer? But let's bring it closer to today. In politics, alliances shift like shadows. Leaders shake hands in public while plotting betrayal in private. In business, CEOs are overthrown not by strangers, but by their own partners or protégés. And in personal life, how often do heartbreak, betrayal, or disappointment come not from enemies, but from friends, lovers, even family? The pain cuts deepest precisely because we never suspected them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The illusion of trust exists because people want to believe in it. We are taught from childhood to trust others, to open our hearts to believe that sincerity is rewarded. But sincerity doesn't protect you in the jungle of power, it exposes you. When you give your trust freely, you hand someone the map of your weaknesses, your fears, your desires. And once they know, they can use it against you. So why do we keep falling into the same trap? Because trust feels good. It is comforting to believe that someone is on your side. It feels noble to think of loyalty as unbreakable. But feelings are not facts, and comfort is not safety. Machiavelli would argue that true wisdom lies in suspicion, not the paranoia that isolates you, but the clarity that keeps you alert. Trust is not a gift to give freely. It is a weapon you must guard carefully. Now, ask yourself, how many times have you assumed someone was trustworthy simply because they smiled at you, helped you once, or claimed to be different from others? How many times did you silence your own doubts because trust seemed easier than caution? That is the illusion at work, luring you into lowering your guard, setting the stage for betrayal. And here is the cold reality. Machiavelli forces us to confront. It is not your enemies you must fear most, but your allies. Enemies show their hostility openly. Allies disguise it until the moment it benefits them to strike. Which blade do you think cuts deeper, the one you see coming or the one you never expect? The illusion of trust is seductive, but illusions kill. To survive, you must first shatter it. You must see trust not as a bond, but as a risk. And the moment you accept that, you begin to move with the clarity of power. Because the first step to never being betrayed is to never forget that betrayal always waits in the shadows. Niccolò Machiavelli never sugar-coated reality. In his most famous work, The Prince, he dissected power with the precision of a surgeon, exposing truths that most people would rather ignore. One of his most chilling warnings was simple trust is dangerous because loyalty is temporary. Human beings, he argued, are creatures of self-interest. They will praise you when it benefits them and abandon you the moment your usefulness fades. Machiavelli observed rulers who relied too heavily on promises of loyalty only to be betrayed when fortune shifted. He understood that men are ungrateful, fickle liars and deceivers. Harsh words, but history proves him right. The moment a man finds advantage in betraying you, he will justify it to himself, and society will often forgive him if he succeeds. This is why Machiavelli urged rulers not to base their security on trust, but on control, fear, and calculated suspicion. Think about it, a ruler who believes in loyalty as eternal is already doomed. Armies don't fight for love of their king. They fight for pay, for spoils, for survival. Ministers don't serve out of devotion. They serve because their position benefits them. And friends at court are nothing more than opportunists who attach themselves to rising power like moths to a flame. Machiavelli warned, the brighter you shine, the more these moths will gather, not to admire you, but to drain your flame. Take, for example, the downfall of King Richard II of England. Surrounded by flattering courtiers, he trusted their loyalty blindly. But when his cousin Henry Bolingbroke returned to seize power, those same courtiers vanished. Promises dissolved overnight. His loyal allies recalculated the odds and chose survival over loyalty. Richard lost his crown not to an enemy's strength, but to misplaced trust. Machiavelli knew this pattern was not confined to kings. It applied to every sphere of power, politics, business, even personal relationships. The more trust you place in others, the more leverage you hand them. And leverage in human hands is rarely left unused. But does this mean one must live in constant paranoia? Not exactly. Machiavelli didn't argue for isolation. He argued for realism. To survive, you must deal with people, but you must also see them clearly. He insisted that a wise leader should always assume betrayal is possible. That way, when betrayal comes, you are prepared, not broken. Suspicion becomes not weakness, but strength. Here's the irony. Those who demand your trust the loudest are often the ones most likely to abuse it. The lover who swears eternal devotion, the politician who promises unwavering loyalty, the business partner who says, "Trust me, I'd never betray you." Machiavelli would smirk at these words because they reveal desperation. Honest loyalty doesn't need to be proclaimed, it is proven over time, and even then, it remains fragile. Consider how many modern leaders fall because they trust too quickly. A CEO believes his board has his back until a vote removes him. A politician believes his allies will defend him until they abandon him to save themselves. And in personal life, countless individuals confide their secrets in friends, who later become rivals, ex-lovers, or worse enemies, armed with intimate knowledge. The very trust they gave away becomes the weapon turned against them. Machiavelli's core warning, then, is this: never build your foundation on the shifting sands of loyalty. Instead, build it on vigilance. Expect betrayal as natural, and you will never be surprised. Prepare for disloyalty, and you will always be one step ahead. But here is the subtle genius of Machiavelli. He didn't just tell rulers to distrust, he taught them to use trust as a tool. If others trust you, you gain leverage over them. If they believe in your loyalty, you can control them, lull them into complacency, and strike when it suits you. Trust in his eyes was not a gift, it was a weapon. And the sharpest weapon is always the one your enemy doesn't see. Ask yourself this: when someone betrays you, are you angry because they lied, or because you allowed yourself to believe in a lie? That is the essence of Machiavelli's lesson. Don't hate the betrayer, hate your own blindness. Because in the game of power, blindness is fatal. So when Machiavelli says, "Never trust anyone," he is not preaching paranoia, he is preaching survival. He is reminding us that loyalty has an expiration date, that self-interest always triumphs over sentiment. And once you accept this, you begin to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. The question now is, if trust is so dangerous, why do people keep falling for it? Why do we still cling to illusions of loyalty, even when history screams the opposite? To answer that, we must dig deeper, not into politics or kings, but into the psychology of betrayal itself. Why do people betray? Why does someone who once swore loyalty, who shared laughter, secrets, and victories with you, suddenly turn against you? To Machiavelli, the answer was brutally simple, because human nature is ruled not by loyalty, but by need, desire, and fear. Betrayal is not an exception, it is the rule once circumstances change. At the core of betrayal lies self-interest. People are loyal only until loyalty costs them more than betrayal. A friend may stand by you when it's easy, but if siding with your enemy brings them wealth, status, or safety, loyalty becomes expendable. In their mind, they aren't betraying you, they are surviving. This psychological trick allows them to live with their own treachery. They will tell themselves, "I had no choice. I did what I had to do." History is full of these rationalizations. Consider Benedict Arnold, the American general, who betrayed his own revolution by attempting to hand West Point over to the British. Was it pure malice? No. He felt underappreciated, overlooked, and saw betrayal as the path to recognition and reward. In his mind, he wasn't the villain, he was the victim of others' ingratitude. This is how betrayal often hides not in open hatred, but in wounded pride. Then there is fear. When the cost of loyalty becomes too great, fear drives people to switch sides. Soldiers who desert their generals don't always hate them. They simply fear death more than dishonor. Politicians abandon allies when public opinion shifts, not because their beliefs changed, but because fear of losing power outweighs loyalty. Fear corrodes loyalty faster than any bribe. Machiavelli knew this well, which is why he argued it is safer to be feared than loved. Love fades under pressure. Fear endures. Another force behind betrayal is envy. When you rise too high, even allies may begin to resent your success. Jealousy festers in silence, disguised as smiles and polite words, until the moment it finds a crack to strike. This is why some of the most dangerous betrayals come not from enemies below you, but from friends standing beside you who cannot tolerate your ascent. And then there is opportunity. Many betrayals happen not because of hatred, but because the chance to gain is simply too tempting. A courtier may flatter his king every day, yet the instant he sees an opening to replace him or to profit by aligning with another faction, his loyalty evaporates. Betrayal doesn't always require anger. Sometimes it just requires opportunity. The psychology of betrayal, therefore, isn't built on malice, but on calculation. The betrayer does not see themselves as evil, they see themselves as practical. They convince themselves that betrayal is justified, even noble. I deserve better. He would have done the same to me. I had to protect my family. In the betrayer's mind, treachery becomes a rational decision, not a crime. But here's the cruelest truth. Betrayal hurts the most when it comes from those we trusted most deeply. Why? Because trust creates vulnerability. You don't expect betrayal from strangers. You expect it from those you love, those you rely on, those you assume will stand by your side. And so the pain of betrayal is not only in the loss of an ally, but in the shattering of your illusion. It forces you to confront that you misjudged human nature. Think about your own life. Has a stranger ever truly betrayed you? At worst, a stranger cheats you or deceives you. But betrayal requires intimacy. It requires someone who knew your secrets, your weaknesses, your heart. And that is why betrayal is so devastating. It is not only the act itself, but the exposure of how naive you were to trust in the first place. Machiavelli would argue that betrayal is not a possibility. It is an inevitability once conditions shift. The only way to protect yourself is not to eliminate betrayal. It cannot be eliminated, but to expect it, to prepare for it, and to design your life and power in a way that betrayal cannot destroy you. If you build your security on trust, you will fall when it crumbles. But if you build it on foresight, suspicion, and control, betrayal becomes just another move on the board, a move you already anticipated. So the psychology of betrayal teaches us a chilling lesson. Don't ask if people will betray you. Ask instead when, why, and how. Because when you understand the forces of self-interest, fear, envy, and opportunity, betrayal no longer surprises you. It only confirms what you already knew. And this leads us to a darker, sharper question. If betrayal is inevitable, can trust itself be turned into a weapon? Can you use the very thing that destroys others as a tool to strengthen your own power? The answer is yes, and that is the art of transforming trust from a weakness into a weapon. If trust is so dangerous, why not eliminate it completely? Because Machiavelli understood something deeper. Trust is not only a weakness, it can also be one of the most powerful weapons in your arsenal if you know how to wield it. The difference lies in whether you are the one giving trust or the one receiving it. When you give trust, you hand someone power over you. But when others trust you, they hand you the weapon. And the most effective rulers, generals, and manipulators throughout history have mastered the art of making people believe in their loyalty, their honesty, their promises, while never fully committing to those bonds themselves. Think of it this way. Trust is a currency. Most people spend it recklessly, giving it away for free. The wise, however, collect it, hoard it, and spend it only when it secures greater advantage. If you can make others trust you, you control them without force. They lower their guard, reveal their secrets, and willingly hand you leverage. And once you have leverage, you no longer need to betray them outright. You simply guide them, manipulate them, and when necessary, strike at the moment of greatest advantage. History is filled with examples of leaders who used trust as a tool of domination. Take Alexander VI, one of the most cunning popes of the Renaissance. He projected loyalty to allies, promising safety and partnership. But behind the scenes, he shifted alliances, constantly exploiting the trust of others to expand his power. His enemies often underestimated him precisely because they believed his words, only to find themselves trapped once their guard was down. Even in war, generals have long weaponized trust. Consider how spies operate. They infiltrate by pretending loyalty, by earning trust so completely that their targets reveal everything willingly. In this sense, trust is not about sincerity. It is about control. A well-placed lie wrapped in the appearance of loyalty is often deadlier than an open attack. And this applies to everyday life, too. In business, a partner who positions himself as utterly reliable, gains access to information, and influence others would never give away freely. In relationships, the person who can make themselves seem harmless and trustworthy often has the greatest power to manipulate. Trust disarms people more effectively than threats ever could. But here lies Machiavelli's genius. He didn't simply say, use trust. He warned never to believe it yourself. Others' trust in you is a gift, but your trust in them is a liability. This one-sided approach allows you to benefit from the illusion of loyalty without ever being enslaved by it. You can play the game of sincerity while never falling victim to it. So how can trust be turned into a weapon by using it to create dependency? Make others believe you are their ally, their safe harbor, the one person they can rely on. The more they trust you, the more they reveal. The more they reveal, the more you control. And when the time comes to act, you decide whether to honor that trust or to turn it against them for maximum gain. Here's the chilling paradox. The people who seem most trustworthy often hold the sharpest knives, because they have positioned themselves perfectly close enough to see your weaknesses, but hidden enough to strike without warning. By the time you realize the danger, it is already too late. So trust is not something to run from. It is something to master. Do not be the fool who gives it away freely. Be the strategist who collects it, shapes it, and uses it to control the board. Because in the end, betrayal is only devastating to those who never understood that trust itself is a weapon. And this brings us to the crucial survival skill Machiavelli emphasized. If trust can be exploited, then suspicion must become your shield. But how do you balance suspicion without drowning in paranoia? How do you remain vigilant without isolating yourself completely? That is the art of strategic suspicion, the next step in protecting yourself from betrayal. If you cannot trust blindly, does that mean you must live in constant paranoia? Machiavelli would say, no. Living in fear of everyone is as dangerous as trusting everyone. The key is not paranoia. It is strategic suspicion. Suspicion, when applied with precision, becomes a shield that protects you without consuming you. Strategic suspicion means assuming that betrayal is always possible, yet never letting it destabilize your judgment. You watch, you listen, you test, but you never reveal your hand too quickly. Instead of asking, "Who can I trust?" you ask, "How long can I use this person before they turn?" This subtle shift transforms suspicion from weakness into strength. Machiavelli advised rulers to constantly observe the behavior of those around them. Promises are cheap, but actions reveal intent. If someone flatters you too much, they likely want something. If someone offers loyalty too eagerly, they may be positioning themselves for advantage. Suspicion doesn't mean accusing them outright. It means keeping their motives in question, no matter how convincing their words may seem. History offers countless lessons in the art of suspicion. Consider Stalin, whose paranoia bordered on madness. He purged even his closest allies, believing betrayal lurked everywhere. While his suspicion kept him in power, it also destroyed trust within his regime, breeding fear and instability. On the other hand, leaders like Queen Elizabeth I mastered suspicion without letting it consume them. She surrounded herself with spies and informants, ensuring she always knew who plotted against her, yet she rarely lashed out without proof. Her suspicion was measured, not reckless, and it kept her throne secure for decades. In business and personal life, strategic suspicion functions the same way. A smart entrepreneur doesn't assume partners are loyal forever. They build contracts, safeguards, and exit strategies to prepare for betrayal. A cautious individual doesn't assume friends or lovers are perfect. They watch for patterns' consistency and whether loyalty holds when tested by hardship. Trust is verified, never assumed. But suspicion must be balanced. If you suspect everyone constantly, you create enemies where none exist. If you reveal too much distrust, you push people away unnecessarily. The art lies in hiding your suspicion behind a mask of confidence. Outwardly, you appear calm, approachable, even trusting. Inwardly, you question everything. This duality, the mask of trust and the mind of suspicion, is what Machiavelli would call true wisdom. Ask yourself, how often have you ignored small warning signs because you wanted to believe in someone's loyalty? A hesitation, a contradiction, a sudden shift in tone, all dismissed because suspicion felt uncomfortable. Strategic suspicion forces you to acknowledge those signs. It doesn't mean you strike immediately, but it means you file the information away, ready to act if patterns emerge. Think of it as building invisible armor. With suspicion, no betrayal surprises you. You may not prevent it, but you can cushion its blow sometimes, even turn it to your advantage. If someone tries to deceive you, but you already suspected them, their betrayal becomes confirmation, not devastation. Machiavelli's genius was not only in warning rulers to expect betrayal, but in showing them how to benefit from it. Sometimes suspicion allows you to bait out a traitor, to let them reveal themselves while you remain untouched. Other times, it helps you play one betrayer against another, turning disloyalty into a weapon for your own survival. So what does strategic suspicion demand from you? Constant vigilance, sharp observation, emotional control, and above all, the discipline to never let your desire for comfort override your awareness of reality. Because in the end, betrayal doesn't destroy those who expect it. It destroys those who refuse to see it coming. And this brings us to the final modern battlefield, a world where trust is preached loudly but broken silently. How do these Machiavellian warnings apply to our lives today, in politics, in business, and in our personal relationships? That is where the last piece of this puzzle lies. Machiavelli's warning about trust wasn't confined to kings and princes. It echoes loudly in today's world. Modern society likes to believe it has evolved beyond betrayal, that with contracts, institutions, and laws, loyalty is more secure. But look closer, and you'll see the same patterns repeating, only dressed in new clothing. The truth is, betrayal is timeless. In politics, alliances are built on shaky foundations. Politicians campaign side by side, swearing unity only to turn against each other when power shifts. Just think of how often a trusted aide or ally leaks information not because of principle, but because of personal gain. Every scandal in the news is usually born from betrayal within the inner circle, not from an external enemy. Machiavelli would smile. Knowingly, nothing has changed. In business, the illusion of trust is even more dangerous. A startup founder trusts his co-founder with everything: ideas, finances, secrets, only to be pushed out once the company succeeds. Corporate boardrooms are arenas where betrayal is polished into strategy. Executives shake hands during the day and plot each other's downfall at night. Entire fortunes are lost, not because of market crashes, but because someone trusted too much. The higher the stakes, the more ruthless betrayal becomes. And then there is personal life, the area where most people feel safest, yet are most vulnerable. How many friendships have shattered over jealousy, competition, or envy? How many relationships have ended, not from fading love, but from betrayal behind closed doors? When you think about it, betrayal almost never comes from strangers. It comes from the people you opened your heart to, the ones you thought would never turn against you. The closer they are, the deeper the cut. So what lesson should we draw today? Machiavelli does not tell us to abandon trust completely. That would make life unbearable. Instead, he tells us to approach it with eyes wide open. Trust in the modern world must be earned, tested, and monitored. It should never be given as a gift. It should always be an exchange. You trust someone not because of their words, but because you've seen how they act when loyalty is costly. The modern Machiavellian mindset is about building systems, not illusions. A wise entrepreneur uses contracts and safeguards so betrayal cannot destroy him. A wise leader surrounds himself with multiple advisors, never allowing a single person to hold too much power. A wise individual in relationships sets boundaries, keeping parts of himself protected so that even if betrayal comes, it cannot shatter him completely. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: betrayal, while painful, can also be useful. When someone betrays you, they reveal their true nature. They unmask themselves, saving you from greater harm in the future. In a way, betrayal is not just destruction, it is information. And information in the Machiavellian sense is power. So today, when you hear someone promise eternal loyalty, ask yourself, what will they do when loyalty no longer serves them? When you place your trust in a friend, a partner, a colleague, ask what happens when circumstances change. These questions don't make you cold. They make you prepared. Machiavelli's warning remains as sharp now as it was 5 centuries ago. Never trust anyone completely, not because the world is full of evil, but because the world is full of self-interest. And once you accept this truth, you stop being surprised by betrayal and start being ready for it. And now we arrive at the end of this journey. We've unmasked the illusion of trust, explored the psychology of betrayal, and discovered how suspicion can protect us. But the question remains, how do we carry this mindset forward without becoming prisoners of fear? That is where the conclusion must guide us. Trust is the sweetest illusion and the deadliest trap. Machiavelli warned us that betrayal is not an exception, but a certainty once conditions change. From emperors and kings to modern CEOs and everyday relationships, history keeps repeating the same brutal lesson: those who trust blindly fall the hardest. But the purpose of this lesson is not to turn you into a paranoid recluse. It is to sharpen your awareness, to remind you that trust should never be given freely. It must be earned, tested, and always monitored. Trust is a risk, not a guarantee. And when you forget this, you hand someone the blade that may one day be used against you. The path of wisdom is to master both sides of trust. Protect yourself from giving it too easily while learning how to inspire it in others. When others trust you, you hold the advantage. When you trust too much, you become vulnerable. Balance lies in suspicion, wrapped in calmness, in vigilance, hidden behind a mask of confidence. So ask yourself who truly deserves your trust, who has proven loyalty not in comfort, but in sacrifice. And more importantly, what safeguards do you have when betrayal finally comes? Because it will. If this warning from Machiavelli opened your eyes, leave a comment with your own thoughts on trust and betrayal. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because in the next video, we'll uncover another dark truth of power: why fear lasts longer than love.